Yay. Yeah, so this is a little bit of one, a little bit more focused on a really type of parenting and age of parenting. So, yes, I am Carol, I'm clinical mental health counselor in Orem office, full-time Utah County. So, and if most of you know me by now, we have a YouTube channel, right? So this will go on YouTube and it will get sent to you if you're registered for this, and it will, the recording and the PowerPoint, so you have both. So don't worry about it. You will get the PowerPoint. And if you don't, email me. If something happens, like it doesn't come through or you don't get that, you can always email me for any resources or things I talk about. I kind of bring up stuff along the way. Then go ahead and just email me, Carol with the Y at blomquistel.com. And we're going to remind everybody this is being recorded. And if your camera is on, you get pushed to the first, and you'll be in the recording. So you can, doesn't matter to, I love the camera on, but if you want it to be in the recording, just know that you'll have it in the recording. But so let's chat about parenting. The first 3 years. So after, of course, I do this, I'm like, oh, this could be part 2, part 3. There's so much to 0-3. We could just do prenatal, like everything post and pre, just around birth and postpartum, and just the first 6 weeks. I could do a whole workshop on that. I signed up for a training about postpartum in prep for this workshop. Literally, I found a training. It was like a 4-hour training. I was very, very disappointed in it. So just so you know, didn't use anything out of it. I have my own resources and my own books, of course. So we're going to go through lots of those parenting resources. Because I was disappointed in the training, it was basic stuff about postpartum and others, but they didn't even touch on attachment, which is the, I guess, biggest thing that I want to make sure that we learn, or you learn, or about, so you can learn more, because it is vital. It is the 0-3 time. Attachment, you, bonding, child, couples, everything. It's all about attachment. It's all about bond, attachment, and we don't want that to be a attachment trauma during that time. So we're going to definitely talk about, mental well-being and balance, of course. And then I have a couple slides on couple support, right? Because hopefully you have some of that and we can help you add to that. So our benefit for Blomquist, we provide quite a few different things. So if you don't know much about our workshops or our benefit, please reach out to us. Call the main office if you need a couple sessions of couples, or just if you think something shows up in this PowerPoint that you need further help with, please reach out. Free therapy, free benefit, free, to your, with your company's participation there. And then the YouTube channel, if someone doesn't know about the YouTube channel, please chat and say, I don't know where the YouTube channel is. But if you just go to Blomquist Hale, H-A-L-E, and put that in YouTube, we have a YouTube channel. And so I have multiple parenting workshops on there. And of course, I bring them up during other workshops, and you can definitely go to those. Like emotional coaching is one of my most favorite things. So let's just define a little bit of mental well-being and mental illness. So an illness, a disorder, like, I have a disorder, I have diabetes, okay, that's a physical illness that's diagnosed, right? So mental well-being, just how to cope with normal daily stress. You're just your balance of your community, how you contribute, how, your work, your family, um, your relationships, making your mental health a priority is not a sign of weakness, but definitely strengths, because this is definitely important, right? In your balance. So let's just make sure we know the difference between well-being, and then here's a diagnosable mental disorder for your mental illness, right? So behavior is now compromised in your daily um, uh, like tasks. So you have an impairment in most of your area of your life. Okay. So that's what that means. And so we really look at that, right? So for example, the PTSD or substance use disorder, and these are all treatable. Here's balance, well-being, and then here's something that, we definitely need some more help on probably, and you can reach out for those things. So talk about balance. So a little bit on that, right? So physical, mental, social, emotional / spiritual is my 4 balances that I put together. Some people split those up a little bit differently. But the ones that I felt, they here's your physical, here's your mental, here's your social, and then here's your emotional and spiritual together. Knowing what that is and kind of keeping track of that, you can go into some of my other workshops about balance or to preventing burnout, to go into just in general, if you feel like you're out of balance in some of these things, how to reset and repair a little bit, right? And then practicing those coping skills to get you more balanced is the mindfulness or anxiety tools, or anxiety tools for young and old is a workshop that's really good for that. So practicing, it takes some effort, some practice, of course, to go back and forth, right? With getting yourself back on track, in any situation. This is just any burnout situation for sure. But okay, so we're going to start off with sleep. So let's say, everyone in here is a little bit more, it's a little bit more, specific to if you're 0 to 3 parenting right now, or going to be. Hopefully you haven't even, you're a pre-parent, right? You're thinking about having children, you're thinking about going through all these fun things that you're going to, experience with having children. So maybe this is your, 6th child and you have a 1-year-old. Great. Because birth order is really, really fun. It's one of my favorite things as a family life educator. It's like this little birth order book. So there's always room to improve for sleep. It is the number one thing that if you want to improve everything in your life scientifically, is you improve sleep. Now, why we sleep is a workshop that is on YouTube already. Why we sleep. That is a book. I have that book right behind me. So this is just one slide from that. So you can go to that workshop and watch the whole hour about sleep. It is vital that we repair the brain and find that. And it's like, well, that's easy to say when you've got a newborn, or you've got a toddler that's fighting sleep themselves, so you're not sleeping, or you're pregnant and you're not getting much sleep. But there is some things that you can take power over, and really learning about sleep and watching your circadian rhythm, which is this hourly thing, is so vital. So you don't get off track, right? So there's just some hints there. Just want to bring that up to keep you in balance. I could, once again, that's why I have a whole workshop on it. I could talk about that for 45 minutes, just this slide, but right, gonna get to everything else. Sleep. So we have to define the difference between unhappiness, kind of like blue feeling, and depression or major depression. So here's feelings, great, right? Here's depression, and then here's major depressive disorder, right? So just some education again on the difference. We're having lots of thinking errors, some worthlessness feelings. We have hopelessness feelings. We feel lonely. We're depleted. We're burned out. We feel overwhelmed. You know, there's a whole bunch of things that happen when you're dealing with 0 to 3. Now, when I say 0, I want to say negative, 9 months, 2, 3. So all the way from conception to the 3-year-old mark, there's so much in that time, right? And please comment, share. If you have a thought on any of these slides as we're going, please share, unmute yourself, privately chat it to Heather, like she said. So to host or co-host, I'm co-host, she's host. But I will be checking the chat, and we can have a discussion always, or questions, please. So do you think that you have major depression issues if you have focus issues or low energy? These things in red. Not necessarily, because if you just don't sleep well and you're having some chronic sleep issues, that's definitely going to add to all that, right? It's going to add to low energy, concentration issues. Loss of focus is one of the biggest things is about sleep. We think it's something else. It's not. So if, we're having lots of aches and pains, but this is daily right here. This is a daily impairment. Okay, remember, it's in your body. Okay, that's why that's in bold red. So when you're in major depressive symptoms and it's longer than a couple weeks straight daily, I want you to get assessed. I want anyone, and this is not just female. This is dad and mom, and this is anybody, honestly. So this is just loss of interest, low and slow, right? All day, you lose time. So depression is time slows down, okay? Anxiety is time speeds up. We lose time either way, but it's really about these major things on this left side, my right side. I don't know which one it is. Yours and my left side. It's my right side. So these red situations, sleep difficulties, low energy, of course, irritability is huge, and it should be in red too, but irritability is huge. Impulsive behavior, but it's like a lot of my clients that come in, and I see, of course, a lot of women, but men too, but it's that just severe irritation and irregular anger, and so we really want to watch that. We want to say, okay, but that's a root issue to some depression. I think, and teenagers, when I always see if they're punching walls, if they're angry, if they're raging, we've got some of that depression going on. And then they're going to be really low energy at times of the day. They're going to lose focus. And then we have to talk about, okay, we've got some suicidal thoughts. It's not just that I don't want to live, it's I have a plan, or, it's either, it's all through that spectrum of suicidal thoughts and just being kind of hopeless. So just watch this list and do a little assessment, but we're not diagnosing. We're just, hey, I'm having a really hard time with my appetite. Okay. And that is if you have more than 5% loss or gain for the month, increase real quick, real fast in a month, then that's a sign that you need a little more help that you've added to your symptoms. Okay. Any questions on that? And we're just kind of jumping into like just some education about here's what sadness is, and here's what depression is, here's what sleep is, in some of that, because sleep deprived causes a lot of that. And so as far as like some depression, this is a natural treatment for that. If we're just really having a hard time sleeping, then this is what we can do. And I have a whole list of it. I'm a certified integrated medicine provider for mental health. And so I have a certification in this, and added to my family life education certification. And so and other things. And so this is just a tiny bit of that. Super important for women to continue their prenatals forever. I just say, go to the pharmacy, get your prenatals. For men, it's because we're always sleep deprived and we're stress induced. So we want to combat that. So mindful based stuff is presence. Like during the day, we're going to work on some mindful based cognitive therapy, and then here's some supplements, and there's just and of course talk therapy, CBT and DBT for sure. But mindful based cognitive behavioral therapy helps that a lot in these times of stress and the unknowns, because we get into a lot of unknowns, right? A lot of fears, and we'll get into that in a bit about phobias or fears or thinking errors for sure. But what happens is there's so much unknowns with your first. If it's your third, you know a little bit, but still different, right? Every baby's different, every time's different, but at least you know that it's like, okay, I remember, when I started sleeping better and I got on a schedule, and then I could get balanced, and then I could exercise, and then I did this, and then, I got back on routine. And you could see, and you remember yourself getting back on routine, father or mother, doesn't matter, talking about both. And so, but the first child, there's just lots of unknowns. So, and if anyone wants to share, if you're first time parents, if you're third time parents, whatever it is, I'm a little bit like excited because I just watched, like, literally, 5 minutes before I started this, my kiddo sent me her ultrasound for their fourth, so that I know this is going to go on YouTube forever. So yeah, so it's just like, okay, so grandma number 4 is on its way. So it's always just fun to watch that process. So anyone want to chat about that so far? Do we want to check in? How are we doing? First time moms, up to 80% of new moms experience the baby blues. We call it the baby blues. It's sleep deprived, it's the unknowns, it's a lot of OCD stuff that starts coming out, and it's not, you don't have a disorder. It's just, this is what happens. But most of the time, most of that passes within the first 2 weeks, because there's extreme sadness or unknowns. The brain, when I teach the anxiety program, we talk about this a ton. When you have a lot of unknowns, and a lot more unknowns happen when you're first time parents or going through these stages, or just, toddler years, there's so many unknowns that we jump to conclusions. We have lots of thinking errors, right? We have lots of fears. And so when the brain doesn't have a known, we go to unknowns, and then we jump to conclusions. So we need to find some knowns, right? You know what I mean? Knowns, unknowns. And that will help us, like, oh, well, I don't know this. Well, let's find that out. Let's get help for that. Or let's figure out a plan. And I'll talk about that a little bit later, about getting on a plan as a couple, because super important to have a plan, because then you strike out the unknowns and you have a plan for the knowns. Now, it doesn't always go to plan, doesn't always go to, or, in order of like, perfect plan. Your plan doesn't always work, but that's why I always do A, B, and C plans with every kiddo in my office, a teenager, 10-year-old, anybody. We always come up with a plan. So why not? A, B, and C. If A doesn't work, you go to B, and if B doesn't work, you go to C, and then it's like, I have power over this. So it helps with all of that kind of stuff. And caring for yourself. So this is just a little slide of 2 handouts of just some statistics. You can look over it later. Tip right here, though, is what I teach in the anxiety program. Practice tip or tips. Temperature is T, I is intense aerobic exercise, P is peace breathing, and then the next P is paired muscle relaxation. And it gives a little example of that. I actually go over that in the tools, anxiety tools for young and old. And I put that distress tolerance techniques in behavioral therapy, because the anxiety program we teach here have a lot of DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy properties. And so, of course, if you want to take that, that's free. And that starts again July 10th. So it's an ongoing program. So check that out if you want to sign up for that, if you're struggling with any of those things and want some more skills. A code word is super important right here that I have couples do all the time for anything. If you're at a family member's house and you're over for, at your in-laws, for dinner, there's always a code word. That means I am at a 6 or a 7 out of 10 right now, or I need a break, or I need you meet me over here, or I need to go to the bathroom for a minute to regroup. Okay. So just make sure that you have some of these set up, right? So, I'm going to use temperature when I need to bring myself back to the present. The example they gave is, you put your face in ice water. I don't love that one. I use, by the way, let's just correct that one. But I mean, you can't always put your face in face water or your face in ice water. I'm never going to do that. I always have makeup on. It's like, what happened to you? So realistically, if you're at work, if you're at somebody's house, if you're at home, I want 2 ice cubes in your hand. So how to check in to get more mindful is, let's put 2 ice cubes in your hands and you squeeze them like this until they're melted. It only takes a couple minutes. Yeah, and that will help you get more grounded. So things like that. So these are just some statistics and some help there. Okay, so fathers. Did you ever know that we never talk about fathers? Who's a father? Raise your hand in the chat or something. So I know you're here. Who's here that we haven't chatted too much yet? Okay. So did you know that there's resources now? I mean, when I think about my father, where there's no internet, he still doesn't have a smartphone. What kind of services or help or boot camp for fathers is there back in the day? Like for my generation, my father's generation, I'm not that old, but I'm not that young. Okay. So I'm a grandma. So who has used fathers? Like, have you looked up father help, postpartum for fathers, for dads? Anyone? I have this listed on here twice. I just realized I must have doubled it up. So I want to know who has found some support for fathers. Okay, someone says yes. Okay, good. So these are just the ones I found, and I would love for any of you to add to this. Of course, these books and parenting books, most of the time moms read that. Honestly, moms read the parenting books. Moms come in to parenting therapy with me a lot more than males. And then I say, hey, please come in together. please, let's just do one parenting one together so we're on the same page. You can watch my 30 parenting workshops on anything that you want that are already on YouTube. So make an agreement on how to support each other. Okay. So a partnership is never 50-50. You're going to get this PowerPoint and this link, and all the resources in the back of this PowerPoint have these links too. So bootcampfordads.org, help for dads, this postpartum net get help is going to be in the PowerPoint. So hopefully you can get that and then you can look at those. So why is an agreement needed? Because partnerships are not 50-50. We have this great big myth that you have to, it's 50-50. It's really 100-100, because I'm going to show up with 20 and I'm going to come home and say, okay, here's 20. I have 10. I have 10 or 20 today. And the other person's going to say, you know what? I've got 90. I've got 80. I can make up for the rest of you, to make us 100% to show up for our kids, to make dinner, whatever it is for the day, right? Now there's times where your partner is going to be 5 and 10 and maybe a 20 at the most. And you come home or you show up and you're at a 20. What are you gonna do? Well, first you can't, if you're not voicing that, like, hey, I'm at a 20. Well, you're at a 20. And it might be a problem if you're both at a 20 for a really long time, meaning that tells me you're both burned out to a point, right? You've only got 20% to go. And if you go past 20%, you're going to lose it. So if you're both at 20, make an agreement on what that looks like. Well, number one, Gottman always talks about, be kind. How are you going to be kind to each other? So someone says, my wife and I pick each other up when the other is burned out. Yeah, but you have to talk about it. And you have to have an agreement of like, hey, when I'm at a 20, I need some real deep kindness and some support. What does that look like? Okay, let's do A, B, and C plan. Hey, we call someone. A is this, I can make up 80%. B is we call somebody, a neighbor, a mom, mother-in-law, a grandma, right? And say, hey, can you come pick up this other kid, or can you bring dinner in? Because we have had it for many days in a row here. And so it's really, difficult if we're not reporting. So the number one thing I have couples do is report. If you don't report, you're going to be in a parent-child relationship by always asking, well, what's wrong? What are you doing? What's for dinner? Yeah, you're always asking. My husband reports that, oh, I'm on my way home. Oh, so what did you want to do for dinner? It's a daily. And we have 7 blended kids. We don't only have one adult child that lives with us, but we always are around with all of them. So what does that look like when I report? So it's really a number. And then you have a code word that you say, yeah, that means I'm at this number or this. And I always do 0 to 10 because that's your suds. That's your unit scale. So 0 to 10, 10 is like, I am over, way over. I'm in the back of my brain. I'm in fight, flight, or freeze. I'm clear back here. Okay. So just use a number. And, men love logic. They love numbers. So just do a number. It's very easy. So just make, like someone just said, like make an agreement so you can have a plan. And then you prep for that plan. So if you have to get to C, make sure there's a little plan of like C says, this is the plan. This is how we prep for that when we both get to C's out of A, B, and C plan. You get it? Are you lost? Everyone with me? So hopefully that helps, because once again, it's all about the unknowns. And when we are floating around in an unknown, our brain does not like it, doesn't like it. Okay, so ready to go on to how we get to attachment. Does anyone have any questions so far? Because this is a total shift into the other half. I always do a half and half pretty much. It's like, like I said, it could be a part 1 and 2 for sure. But so just again, a little bit of definition on attachment, so we understand what that is. So early childhood, becoming attached. This is one of my big old thick books. It's Becoming Attached, by Karen Robert. So attachment is a theory, but now to me it's not a theory. It's we have brain neuroscience that shows this. When there's attachment bond break in the early years of 0 to 3, the brain develops different. So it's not a theory, it's science. It's an emotional and social development of needs. So think about your attachment, your emotional bond with the caregiver, 0 to 3. You think of yours, right? And how that relationship with a primary caregiver was normal or was emotional neglect. And this is what happens, right? We go into a secure attachment, if that's good, 0 to 3, right? And we get our needs met. When we cry, we have trust. So attachment's all about trust. So I'm going to definitely touch on attachment here. And then because it is so vital, doesn't mean you can't make up for that, but it is really vital of 0 to 3. 0 to 6, until they go to kindergarten, is so vital. It's like, even because over 80% of the brain develops in that time. So if that doesn't put any pressure on you, I don't know what would, but I don't want you to get overwhelmed. I don't want you to think, wow, that my kiddo's 3, so I've lost. No, you haven't. It's an ongoing process with your caregivers. I don't care how old you get. You will always want approval from your biological parents. Now, hustling for approval is what I help people with. You don't need to hustle for approval, but you want approval. And that is because it's scientific. It's your attachment. It secures the brain or it doesn't in trust. So guess what happens with us as adults if we had attachment breaks in our childhood? Then it leads us to be insecure in our adult relationships. And that's the problem. We don't parent the same if we have an anxious attachment or an avoidant attachment. Make sense? Most of you probably have heard of attachment, right? Who hasn't, or who, if you haven't, I've got some great books, but attachment is in tuning into, your emotions, communicating directly, cooperation and flexible behavior in a relationship. That's a secure attachment. And we want our children, we want our babies to be securely attached. So do you want an example of that? So you drop the kiddo off, they're 18 months old, and they cry like crazy. You drop them off at, preschool and, grandma's house or, nursery, whatever you're doing. So is that a secure attachment, anxious attachment, or avoidant attachment? They cry like crazy. And let's just stop there. Anybody have a clue? And they don't want you to leave the room. Anybody have some ideas? Anxious attachment for sure. But what if they stop crying within, say, 5 minutes? And you calm that and you say, okay, I'll be right back. I'll be right back. You know, and someone else holds them, the nursery leader, the daycare person, the grandma, the grandpa, and then since their aunt, babysits them, it's like, oh, it's playtime, and they cry for a minute, but then they see the other person and they trust that person too. So say they stop crying after 5 minutes and they do okay. Secure. Absolutely. Because if they didn't care that their parents laughed, if your kids don't care, we've got a problem. That means they're not attached at all. They're very avoidant. They're dismissive. So that's just a little example. So we think that our kids are not supposed to cry. Oh my gosh, they are. They communicate that they're upset, and then someone meets their needs, and then you leave and you come back in an hour and you say, oh, I'm back. And that actually trains the brain, if you will, to develop differently than if you never left them in the first place. I want couples to leave their kids. I'm like, when's the last time you guys went overnight? Well, really anxiously attached. I get a lot of anxious kids in my office with a lot of anxious parents. That's what I get. And I think it's pretty relevant, especially the last 3 or 4 years, right? So in the last 3 years, we've gotten we've got more anxious attachment. We're not avoidant. We are a lot more anxious. So we struggle, and we get triggered, right? We struggle communicating. We have a lot of a nervous system. So we are sensitive to our nervous system. So, and it causes us to be nervous, but so it's like, we're a lot more sensitive in that way, our nervous system. So we want to help that, right? So this is like how, okay, we're children, and then here's the adult part. Oh, but here's the parent part. We want to really learn our own secure attachment, learn to get to our own secure attachment so we can be secure attached parents. Because if we're anxious parents, we over involve the children. We never leave, we don't want to leave them because they don't want to leave us. So let's just make sure we do a lot of safety behaviors and never leave the child with anyone. And so it's up to you. There's lots of, grays in this for sure. I'm not saying you have to leave your kids with the daycare provider, right? It's just practicing going and coming back and going and coming back. So they build that trust. And it's like, yes, my caregiver comes back and gets me. And then I'm happy to see them. And it's all but just love and happiness and modeling that the mirroring neurons really make a difference in how you look and how you feel, because you're projecting that onto the child. Mirroring neurons. That's a whole other subject. That you've heard of lots of studies about the babies, right? That with attachment, you can look them up. I can't remember what it's actually called, but there's really great studies. It's really hard for me to watch, and when I've done trainings, I was just in one with last year, and they played that, and it's really hard to watch the parent be stoic and have the baby just like, what's wrong? What are you doing? Why aren't you smiling me anymore? Why aren't you involving me in the mirroring neurons? There's no communication. It's just emotion, and there's no verbal. There's emotional communication, but no verbal. So you know what I mean? It's like, oh, the baby's like, this is distressing when you do that. And so think about your attachment style and how that's affecting. Now, if you want more on that, I'll show you a book in the back about how to get through your attachment, so you're a better, so you can show up better as a secure attachment parent. Find your wounds, hold your boundaries, notice your triggers, track your emotions, connect, body work, therapy, trauma release. Okay, so body work, massage therapy, trusting, trauma release, stuff like that. That's the deeper work that you might have to get to if you have some really deep developmental trauma, which is 0 to 26 till your brain develops. So if you're a young parent right now, you're 20-ish, then those are still there. And so hold your boundaries. So this is where we want to go to a secure attachment. By the way, avoidant is counterdependent, an anxious may become codependent, and a disorganized is mixed. Okay. Okay. So if anybody knows me, I'm a book hoarder. That's what I call myself. I became that way during my undergrad and grad school, and then big time after grad school. I never thought I'd be an educator or a therapist ever. Learning disability took me a long time to get through, tests or getting to this point, right? I didn't like to read. And so with now, just learn how to find a book and go slow through it or listen to it. But the point is take a chapter and just read that chapter and read it over and over and over again. So I've read hundreds of parenting books and lots of undergrad, family studies stuff, but there is 3 books, in my opinion, and the only 3 books you ever need. And it's these 3 in the middle, because it's the most researched and the longest on the, on the market, that's continuous. And that is John Gottman, How to Raise an Emotionally Intelligent Child, and Love and Logics. And then this one and all of his work with Gordon and Gabby Armady, that Hold On to Your Kids. It's like, wow. And they all 3 have to do with attachment per se, but Hold On to Your Kids is way more, it's really geared towards attachment. This early childhood book goes into so many great points, because with just general love and logics, right? But this one's 0 to 6, right? So it's like, it goes through all these myths, right? The first weeks of life, a child's ability to learn basic cause and effect begins during the first few weeks of life. It totally does. That's the whole point. And so it is so vital to understand some of this. So you have a plan. So you can say, I try to do my best at, setting these limits, but give choices and have power, to the child instead of power struggles. So Raising an Emotionally Intelligent Kid, I have a whole workshop on that. It's called Emotional Coaching. I have a couple handouts in this PowerPoint. But Hold On to Your Kids is these 2, of course, Gabby Armady, I have about 5 books of his, and he's just a fantastic author. He's like 80 now. And so is Gottman and John Gottman. I mean, I think he's almost 80, but just phenomenal, right? So here's Men's Guide to Women. I tell women to read this book. It's not just for men. 60% of this book over here, and there's like a black page, and it says, and 60% of 186 pages is on how to romance a woman. So I don't know about you guys, but we all need help in that. We all need some science in that. And that's your book. So that end of story. Okay. Some toddler discipline. I do like this book over here, so I put that up there. Without Shame. So deleting shame, shame parenting, right? So this one's just phenomenal. I could go on and on about Love and Logics and the basics of it. And they just have by the way, this one's a PDF. You can read that for free. They just have Jim Fay and Charles, they have a phenomenal website for just lots and lots of resources. So here's a little bit on the emotional coaching by John Gottman. There's one chapter in there that just talks about the 5 steps. Just read that. And that's what I teach on, just that chapter. And these are the 5 steps. And here's the handout for it. So I go into a little more in depth, right? So here's the steps. And step 5 is my favorite because it's so much more in depth. And this is my favorite, step, but there's 5 steps in 5. So make sure, number 5, help your child find the solution, choices, encouragement, coaching, challenging, processing the outcome with logical thinking. That's your love and logics. Sometimes a good distraction helps. Put that in a situation like jumping jacks, talking on the phone, whiteboard, drawing, emotional stuff. So it's like, so there's lots of tips there, right? Too. And this is my handout, my tips on each one. So here's some toolbox stuff. So I know we're like going way over so much, right? And so here's the end part of this of like, okay, now we've got a toddler. And how do we get emotionally coached, and not emotional neglect, because that has to do with the attachment. All of it has to do with the attachment. So we emotionally coach instead of shame parent or take away emotion. We celebrate emotion. And so these are some tips on how to do that. A time in is let's celebrate the emotion. Let's sit on the floor together and kick our feet as fast as we can. A feelings bag, sad, mad, happy, are something that you can have. And I always say, go to the dollar store, pick a bag, pick a color. And so each one is like, okay, here's a mad bag or here's a happy bag. And you put 5 senses, 5 objects in the bag that go with them, in the car, at home, in their room. So when you have to do some emotional coaching or time in, you grab that bag and you sit in that emotion and you go through each one of them. You find a container that you put some self-soothing stuff in. So whatever that is. So here's a bag, but then here's a container that you can have a box and say, oh, here's our self-soothing box. It's, you put bubble bath in there and say, oh, which one do you want to do? I want to have a bubble bath. And so then you go do a self-soothing and kiddo has a bubble bath, or you do. So, right. A music collection, list of distractions. Okay. So this one's where I like to get, the tongue depressors, like that are like big and thick, that I put in my garden. I mark my garden things that I grow with those. So you get a black marker and you put on there a 10-minute activity, right? That is a good distraction. So you want me to give you some examples of that? Like go on a walk, color for 10 minutes, or, I get to watch this movie for 10 minutes. It's a distraction. And it's really 10 minutes though for a kiddo or for you. And they get to choose one of those, right? And so they can pull one of those sticks out and choose between a couple of them they're reasonable. They're things that you can do in 10 minutes, anywhere, any place, anytime, anywhere. So, you can make something to eat. You can do some kind of distraction that's good for the toddler. Plan ahead for strong emotions. That's what this is all about. Now, have you heard of me talk about in the other workshops of like power rooms? Anybody know anything about the kitchen, bedroom, and bathroom? Because when I do family therapy, rooms in the house are very, very important. Does anybody know about those? Good. Doesn't sound like it. Anyways, real quick. Kitchen, bedroom, and bathroom are power rooms. Okay. So think about it. Very early on, if there is power struggles, there will be sleep issues, food issues, or potty issues. Now you probably haven't got to but brushing teeth, people start that at 2, right? When their teeth come in or earlier, and now there's a struggle which could turn into trauma in the bathroom, or bath time, or potty time, or hygiene time when they get to be older. So yeah, that's just watch those rooms. And if a kiddo comes in, any kiddo under 10, it's definitely like play therapy modality and therapy. And we don't do much of that at Bonequest because that's long-term care and you want to do it weekly most of the time. So if there's some major issues going on, and we're talking 3 and under, but we've had some kind of traumas that have happened with 3 and under. And that's definitely more just parenting until that kid gets a little bit older to do some play therapy. But if kitchen, bedroom, and bathroom are all gone, if you will, like struggling in all 3 of those rooms, then we have a power struggle. And you can watch a workshop called Sleep versus Power, or Power Struggles versus Sleep, something like that, for bedtime. I have so many parents with bedtime struggles, whether they're 3 or 5, right? So, or 10 or 15, but that's deeper rooted than just, I don't want to go to bed. So little definition of tantrums and meltdowns, just look at that later. If you're having that, it's in here. And I have a whole workshop on that too. So bullying, I put that in here because of most likely, most of you are not first-time parents, maybe. Most of you in here. And you have more than 1 kiddo. So what happens when you've got sibling bullying? And you've got physical abuse, hitting, kicking, pushing, emotional abuse, or 20% of children were involved in sibling bullying. That's way low, but it's, what I mean? It's like so long ago, but then it's like, oh, but here's a newer study, so the birth order book, super good for that. It's really interesting anyways for you, like why you turned out the way you did is because of birth order. Right? We have very little control over a lot of things. And once we understand that, we don't have much control over how our kids really turn out. Honestly, we do have control over attachment and trying to get most of that of like your child being pair-oriented or adult parent-oriented. That's the Hold On to Your Kids book, how to get them parent-oriented. We really need to hold on to them and get them to go to adults, right? Parent-oriented. He just constantly talks about how damaging it is when our kids rely on their peers for love, for support, for advice, for all those things. So a few things on couples real quick. We're almost out of time. We started a little bit late, but we'll get to them. This is how we build love maps. Here's the sound. You can go to their website, their blog, and I have the link there for that. But this is what we're trying to achieve. And this is just Gottman's love and maps at the bottom there to go up the ladder, to go up the house, to build the house. And my most favorite things to talk about with new parents is 5 hours of magic. We got to do it. We've got to intentionally do our time and be very intentional with our time, or we get very burned out. We very, very, very disconnected, and we lose ourselves. and we don't add to the connection of the relationship. And if that doesn't work, what does? What does? So hopefully you can really go back into your partnership and say, what are we lacking? Are we doing 5 hours of magic every week? Do your best with the dating. It's 2 hours, but if it's a half hour here and it's a half hour here and a half hour here, do your best, but really intentionally block out that half hour and say, okay, the baby's asleep. We don't need to get a babysitter. We're doing this for a half hour. And most of the time in the beginning, you may need a nap. It's not a date. It's not hot topic time. It's not any of that. So just do the best you can. Okay, here's another practice love, not fear handout. So let's see if there's any questions, comments, and I'll leave this slide up for books. So let me see if we got through all the books. So just this is the link for the magic of the earlier years. Emotionally intelligent kid, becoming attached, hold on to your kids. And there's a whole bunch. Running on empty, I didn't talk about much, but that's overcoming your childhood emotional neglect that will help you be a better parent.